Live from WRAL News Headquarters in Raleigh, your number one source for local news. WRAL News, coverage you can count on.
It's chilly now, but wait till tomorrow morning. Our wind chill is likely to be in the teens across much of our viewing area. I'll show you when the cold air will arrive.
A brutal New Year's Eve assault. What investigators are sharing about the case.
And a family in mourning. Another Durham teenager killed by gunfire.
Our next Arctic outbreak arrives tonight, bringing bitter wind chills for tomorrow morning's commute. Good afternoon to you. I'm Jeff Hogan.
And I'm Renee Chu. Thanks for joining us. Meteorologist Elizabeth Gardner is in the WRAL Severe Weather Center with a look at what it will feel like where you are.
Ooh, it's going to be really chilly. You know, it was a cold start this morning with temperatures close to freezing, but it's going to be a real cold one tomorrow morning. We have an Arctic blast that comes in late today, overnight tonight, and settles in over us for tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon. Still pretty chilly for us on Thursday, but then all that Arctic air will lift northward. We may see some rain for the weekend. This is a look at where a sub-zero wind chills could be. Not necessarily in our viewing area, but a big chunk of the country, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, the Northeast, and then the mountains of North Carolina. But what will it look like for us? This is a look at our hour-by-hour wind chill for tonight. By 7 o'clock, 31. That's not too bad. But by midnight, it feels like 25. And by 4 a.m., it feels like 14 degrees. And at 7 a.m. in the Triangle, it could feel like 11. We'll take another look at the view of what the wind chills could look like. Could be 19 in Fayetteville, 16 in Goldsboro, and single digits up around Roxborough. Again, this cold air will settle in with us. It's going to be a really chilly afternoon tomorrow as well. And then the cold air retreats and rain rolls in for the weekend. I'll show you when and how much to expect.
Two men charged with kidnapping a woman and assaulting her with a machete are due in court this afternoon. Wake County deputies say Dustin Letchworth and Daryl Holden assaulted the woman on New Year's Eve and held her against her will. WRAL's Chelsea Donovan joins us live on Hatwalt Lane in Wendell, where all this began. Chelsea.
Yeah, so we understand that New Year's Eve assault that you mentioned happened here on Hatwalt Lane. I'm going to step out of the way. This is a private road, and we understand this is the location where those Wake County deputies received a report of that assault. And we know now that this address also matches one of the suspects who was arrested late last night, early this morning. Now, two men were arrested after an extensive manhunt last night that had residents in this area of Zebulon locked inside of their homes. It all started when authorities tried to take 34-year-old Dustin Letchworth into custody, who they say was armed and dangerous and wanted on multiple felonies. He ran from authorities out the back door on Knollwood Lane near Zebulon. A manhunt took place for hours now. Letchworth ultimately turned himself into Zebulon police just before 11:30. Another man, 57-year-old Daryl Holden, was also arrested. Now, this victim told authorities that these two men assaulted her, holding her against her will and attacking her with the machete. We understand the victim was able to leave this residence here on Hatwalt Lane and was transported to the hospital by someone that she knew. I've reached out to Wake County authorities to ask the condition of this victim. We're waiting to hear back. Now, these men are facing several charges: attempted first-degree murder, human trafficking, promoting prostitution for a profit, first-degree kidnapping, and 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. They are due in court later this afternoon in Wake County. We'll be there and bring you updates on WRAL and on TV later this evening. Live in Zebulon, Chelsea Donovan, WRAL News.
Now, a lot of folks got an emergency alert that looked just like this on our phones last night, right around 11:30, even people that didn't live near Zebulon. In the last 30 minutes, this was flying around social media all night and all morning, and the Director of Fire Services and Emergency Management for Wake County offered this explanation. The statement reads in part, "While our intention was to reassure the affected community that the suspect was no longer a danger, a system error caused the alert to reach a much broader audience than intended." The county is working with the vendor to prevent similar issues in the future.
Benson police are looking for a missing 18-year-old. This is Jada Lee Ruffin. Police say she's believed to have a cognitive impairment. She was last seen walking away from her home on Lakeshore Drive. Police say she was wearing a pink jacket, gray pants, and slippers. Anyone with any information about where she might be is asked to call the Benson Police Department or Patrol Officer Dwight Whitaker.
And happening right now in the WRAL Life Center, President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is sitting for Senate confirmation hearings right now. This is a live look at the hearings. He's speaking before the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island spoke. He said he believes Hegseth is not qualified to serve in the role. Hegseth was also interrupted by multiple protesters during his opening remarks. Those protesters were arrested, but he read his opening statement and emphasized Trump's America First agenda and his own commitment to support the warfighter.
That it's time to give someone with dust on his boots the helm. A change agent, someone with no vested interest in certain companies or specific programs or approved narratives. My only special interest is the warfighter.
And Hegseth has faced serious opposition with questions about his qualifications. He has claimed that he has been the victim of a smear campaign.
Michelle, thanks. Special counsel Jack Smith says the government had enough evidence to convict Donald Trump for trying to overturn the 2020 election had he not been voted back in office. The more than 130-page report laid out what Smith calls Trump's unprecedented criminal effort to hold on to power. Trump slammed the report in a series of posts overnight, calling them fake findings.
New this noon, the 15-year-old shot and killed over the weekend has been identified by his family as Arion Clendenning. He went by AJ. WRAL's Monica Casey spoke with his family. Monica.
AJ's uncle tells me he was a student at Riverside High School here in Durham. He says AJ played football and enjoyed playing games on his PlayStation. His uncle Nate has now started a GoFundMe for funeral expenses for that teenager. AJ leaves behind his mother and a sister. He was shot and killed outside his apartment on Danube Drive Saturday afternoon. Nate tells us the family will have a balloon release for AJ later this week, and his funeral will be later this month. AJ is the second person under the age of 18 to be shot in Durham so far this year. As of now, Durham police have not released word of any arrests in this case. They do tell us they believe that the person who shot at AJ was shooting from a vehicle that then fled the scene. Live in Durham, Monica Casey, WRAL News.
Kids in North Carolina are 51% more likely to die from guns compared to the national average. Our WRAL documentary unit explored why that number is so high. You can find unsafe North Carolina kids dying from gun violence at WRALdoc.com.
Cumberland and Orange County schools say their data was involved in the PowerSchool student information system breach. PowerSchool is cloud-based software that holds data for school systems worldwide. It suffered a breach of its data last month. Cumberland and Orange County schools moved to a different service this year. But PowerSchool still holds some old data from the district. They say they are working with the State Department of Public Instruction and PowerSchool to learn the full scope of the breach. Law enforcement confiscated a loaded gun at Enloe High School in Raleigh. In a letter sent to families, the school's principal says the gun was discovered with a student during a voluntary search yesterday. The school resource officer worked with local law enforcement to confiscate the gun. The principal says while they cannot discuss the punishment, state law requires a 365-day suspension of any student in possession of a firearm.
And back here in the WRAL Live Center, several New Orleans police officers were honored for their bravery during that deadly attack on Bourbon Street on New Year's Day in New Orleans. Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams, he honored Sergeant Nigel Daggs, Officer Jacoby Jordan, and Officer Christian Byer, saying that they showed extraordinary bravery in neutralizing the Bourbon Street terror suspect. The officers were praised for running toward danger while Shamsuddin Jabbar drove a truck through that crowded street. According to officials, the officers immediately focused on helping the injured and prevented more deaths.
The SPCA of Wake County is expanding into a $27.5 million facility. The organization broke ground on the project during a ceremony this morning. The new facility is right next to its current one near Tryon Road. The organization says it'll be able to double its spay and neuter capacity in a given year with the new building. This also will expand their social services in an effort to keep pets and families together throughout the state.
A few years ago, we made a change where we started focusing on what I like to call the other end of the leash, because every animal in need at some point was attached to a person. And so what we've realized is that the best way to help animals is by helping the people who love them.
And the SPCA of Wake County hopes to have the new facility up and running at this time next year.
Next at noon, ceasefire imminent. What the deal will include if Israel and Hamas stop fighting.
Also, launch pad traffic jam. How trips to space first need more space on the ground.
Plus, 60,000 names being read out loud. At 12:30, the point being made by activists today over at the state Supreme Court.
Keep watching WRAL News over the air Channel 34 and Spectrum Channel 1257.
Welcome back. You're looking live at downtown Cary Park. Now a little more than a year old. Look at the blue skies there. Lots of amenities there. Be a nice day to go and take a walk there. You're watching WRAL News, available on Hulu and the WRAL app on your TV or streaming device.
The Israeli government and Hamas say they are in the final stages of indirect talks over a deal for a ceasefire and the release of hostages. Here's what we know. The deal would be carried out in 3 phases. The first would last 42 days. Negotiations to reach the second and third phases of a ceasefire agreement would begin after the first 16 days. NBC's Richard Engel explains this is the closest point both sides have come to sealing a deal.
2 Israeli officials tell us that they have never been closer to reaching a ceasefire deal with Hamas, and that for the first time, they're really talking specifics about a deal. They outlined the deal as follows. First of all, this is not a one and done type of arrangement. It's not that Hamas just releases the hostages and the war in Gaza is over. This takes place over time in several different stages. The first one is a 48-hour pause in the fighting. Assuming that holds, Hamas releases 33 hostages. These are the so-called humanitarian cases, the elderly, children, sick, wounded. If that proceeds smoothly, and this could take place in batches over 42 days, so a lot could go wrong in this period. Assuming it continues to go smoothly, it moves on to the second phase of the hostage releases. Those would be younger people, Israeli soldiers, people that Hamas could consider to be Israeli soldiers. At the end of all of this, Israel would pull out of Gaza, pulling out of the major population centers, but keeping a buffer zone, keeping a part of the Gaza Strip as a security perimeter to protect Israel. And during this process, and at the end, Israel will be releasing, it described as hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. The exact number depends on how many hostages are released alive. Richard Engel, NBC News, Jerusalem.
As wildfires continue to burn parts of California, federal investigators have opened an investigation into the cause of the Palisades fire. They say they're also looking at the cause of all fires as potential arson. Crews believe the fire broke out at a popular place to hike called Skull Rock. Federal authorities say so far nothing has been ruled out.
We are at the initial stages of this time, so we ask for patience as we go through this investigation. Everything is on the table in terms of the investigation. The investigation is its early stages.
Coming up at 12:30, we'll tell you about the new brush fire that started as powerful winds threatened firefighter efforts to put out the flames.
Oh, some amazing news here in the WRAL Live Center. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, says she is in remission from cancer. She made that announcement today. She finished chemotherapy a couple of months ago. She posted to her Instagram account saying, "It is a relief to now be in remission, and I remain focused on recovery. Thank you to everyone for your continued support." She revealed that she had cancer back in March of last year, but she did not reveal what type of cancer she had. Again, so excellent that she is in remission.
It is huge news there, Michelle. Thanks for that update. There's a big problem for America's fast-growing space industry. Experts say there are not enough launch pads to handle the huge surge in rocket launches. The U.S. launched a record 145 rockets into orbit in 2024, and this year it's expected to get busier. One publication says a traffic jam is forming at 3 critical launch pads in Florida and California approved for those big rockets. Experts say the U.S. needs more spaceports to compete in the new global space race.
Space is very critical for our national security, for our economic competitiveness, for inspiration for our students and our future workforce, and frankly, to support our everyday life. Communications, navigations, weather forecasts, agriculture, financial transactions.
And smaller launch sites are striking while the iron is hot. The Pacific Spaceport on Kodiak Island, Alaska, is marketing itself as faster and cheaper. Well, I'm going to fly out of Alaska now to space. They did say weather reports in that. I heard weather forecasting.
Nice. Well, speaking of weather forecasting, meteorologist Elizabeth Gardner, with all that sunshine out there, it sure is a beautiful day.
It is. It is a beautiful day. And of course, not a cloud in the sky. If we're going to see the clouds in the sky, of course, we see them via satellite. And the satellites get launched from those rockets, too. So it is very important for us, for sure. We take a look through downtown Raleigh. This is a look, of course, down Fayetteville Street as we take a look from the Jimmy V camera. 42 degrees is our current temperature. We'll likely stay in the 40s until around 6 or 7. Once we hit sunset, the temperatures will start to drop. At about the same time, we're going to see that push of Arctic air coming on in. Right now, it is 37 in Roxborough, but 42 in Rocky Mount, 43 in Goldsboro, 41 in Southern Pines. So it's chilly. It definitely feels good to have a coat on if you're outside right now. And we'll climb into the mid-40s, 47 in Raleigh and Durham, and then 51 in Fayetteville. Lots of sunshine for the rest of the day. Not too much of a wind to deal with, but as we see that our front coming through, this is going to be our almost dry front. Some snow up around Ohio, but right here is this next boundary that's going to be coming through, dropping in that cold air, and it's still up to our north and west, but it is definitely on the way. So we do have that next round of Arctic air that does start to drop in on us, and we'll feel it first thing in the morning. It'll also kick up the wind a little bit, so we'll have a bit of a wind chill to deal with tomorrow. So this is a look at what it could feel like. 18 near the Virginia line, 22 in the Triangle, and in our southern counties, more like 26, where the wind chill is likely to be around 20. The wind chill will be closer to mid-teens in the Triangle, and some single digits possible tomorrow morning up near the Virginia line. As a matter of fact, we could see 9 in Roxborough potentially, 11 in Durham, 16 in Goldsboro, 17 in Southern Pines. So this is cold. We've had wind chills in the teens already this year. So, are we getting used to it? I don't know. It's pretty cold. 22 officially for tomorrow morning at the bus stop, 22 on Thursday, and 29 on Friday. So you're going to need to make sure the kids are all bundled up. Everybody leaving your house needs to be bundled up. If you remember, last week we did have a cold weather advisory, and we may see that. It's possible that they would post that tomorrow. It looks like temperatures could be a little bit warmer on Thursday. So if we see it, it'll probably be tomorrow. There's also a cold weather warning where hypothermia and frostbite are more a thing. That's not likely to be what we'll see. It's just not going to be quite that cold. But, definitely some cold temperatures coming our way. Does it seem like it's been a cold January? It does, doesn't it? It's the coldest since 2018. Of course, we're only about halfway done with January, but we're on track to be the coldest since 2018. And the fourth coldest so far since 2000, the average temperature, and that includes the high and the low, 36 degrees so far for this month. So definitely cold out there. Here's the next thing that happens. All the cold air retreats back to the north, and Saturday and Sunday, we have the potential for rain. Looks like more Saturday than Sunday, but I'll show you what it looks like so far for the timeline coming up.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Dangerous intersection concerns today on WRAL News at 4. The area impacted and why Raleigh community members and local business owners say a few simple fixes could potentially help save lives.
And the warmest year. We talked about a cold January, but what about this? The warmest year. A new data from NASA found when it comes to temperatures in 2024, how our state is working to address the impacts of climate change. And still ahead this noon. Pay to stay. Why Starbucks is reversing its open door policy.
And what's old is new again. How Walmart's new logo pays homage to the past.
Tax season begins January 27th, and while filing documents and crunching numbers can be stressful, there are things you can do to make it easier on yourself. File as early as you can. If you're self-employed or own rental properties, find a trusted tax advisor to help you get through the process. If you just have a W-2, be sure to use credible software to self-report. Try not to write things down because you can make mistakes. And don't forget to factor in life-changing moments.
Bought a house this year. Well, you're going to get a Form 1098 from your mortgage company, and you just plug that in. Or maybe you had a child for the first time. Congratulations. And then you'll be looking for something like a tax credit called the child tax credit.
Most taxpayers have until April 15th to file returns. However, the IRS announced certain extensions for storm-battered regions of the South. People who live in North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, and Florida may have now a May 1st deadline.
Aldi is removing a brand of taquitos from store shelves because the product could contain metal pieces. Casa Mamita chicken and cheese taquitos were sold in stores in 30 states, including here in North Carolina, as well as D.C. There have been no reports of injuries or illness, but the company is pulling the product. If you have this, throw it away or return it to the store for a refund. Starbucks is reversing its open door policy that was put in place after a confrontation in Philadelphia in 2018. That's when a worker called police on two black men who were waiting to meet someone. Video of their arrest led to national outrage. Since then, the company says it has dealt with security issues. The new policy, which calls for workers to ask non-customers to leave, takes effect January 27th.
Walmart is giving its logo the first facelift in nearly 2 decades. Better look close if you want to see it, though. That's it. Walmart's logo now uses a little chunkier font, similar to the typeface the chain used from the 1980s through the early 2000s. A darker blue is also being introduced to keep the brand fresh. The company says the redesigned logo is inspired by founder Sam Walton's old trucker hat. The new logo will appear on the website and app this month, and it'll be rolled out over time at stores across the nation.
They work for the side-by-side. I don't know if I would notice. It's pretty subtle.
Exactly. Hope they didn't spend a lot of money on that.
But it's a change. It's all in the mind, how you can trick your brain into eating healthy.
And here are your winning NC Education lottery numbers on your screen.
Shot in 4K ultra high definition. Your number one source for local news. WRAL News. Coverage you can count on.
Voting rights advocates are holding a vigil in front of the state Supreme Court building today. They're trying to draw public attention to a court battle that could result in tens of thousands of votes being thrown out. A seat on the state Supreme Court hangs in the balance. WRAL Capitol Bureau Chief Laura Leslie is live on Edenton Street in Raleigh. Laura.
Renee, these activists are reading out 60,000 names plus throughout the day today. They're the names of voters that are being challenged by Republican Supreme Court candidate Jefferson Griffin. Griffin claims those votes were illegally cast, and he's asking the court to throw them out after the fact. Democrat Allison Riggs leads Griffin by a little over 700 votes, and that's after the election and 2 recounts. But Griffin and the state Republican Party are asking the state Supreme Court to throw out some 60,000 ballots of people he says are missing information on their voter registration. They're hoping that that will change the outcome of this race. However, many of these voters have been voting for many years, and state election officials say their votes are valid. This event started at 6 o'clock this morning, and organizer Kate Barr says it'll take 17 hours or more to read all the names. Ball wants to call attention to the sheer number of people who could be disenfranchised.
As soon as we set the precedent that if you don't like the outcome of an election, you take it to court and throw it out until you win, we have left the land of democracy and moved into something much closer to what we left back in the revolution.
Now, the case is proceeding at the same time in both state and federal court. That's pretty unusual. Republicans want it to be decided by the state Supreme Court, which is Republican majority. But Democrats want it to be decided by the Federal Court of Appeals. And the Federal Court of Appeals has agreed to take it. They're scheduled to hear this case at the end of the month. In the meantime, we reached out to attorneys for Griffin and to the state GOP for comment. Matt Mercer, the state GOP spokesman, sent me a comment criticizing what he called Democrats' hollow talking point. He said, "We have been clear that the systematic failures are the fault of the NC Board of Elections, not voters." Laura Leslie, WRAL News, live in Raleigh.
Tonight, the community is coming together to help a Raleigh bar destroyed by fire. And the House of Art is also trying to find out how the fire started. This is a photo of a woman caught on surveillance video. She's the last person seen on the property before it went up in flames. The benefit concert takes place tonight from 7 until 11 at the Poorhouse. The community has already raised more than $26,000 with a GoFundMe. We now have a list of items confiscated as part of a child porn investigation involving a Johnston County teacher. According to newly released search warrants, officers searched Jeffrey Hightower's home and vehicle on August 22nd. They seized 2 laptops, 2 hard drives on a bed, a cell phone, and an external hard drive that was duct taped to the bottom of a dresser drawer. Authorities say those devices contained images and videos of child pornography.
A multi-million-dollar upgrade to the Durham County Sheriff's training facility is moving forward. The Board of County Commissioners voted 3-2 last night to approve the project. The vote came after dozens of people spoke to share their thoughts about the $16 million plan. Some are concerned the project will result in underfunding of community programs.
The idea that we can both maintain a robust police force while fostering true community safety is fundamentally flawed.
The project has been 8 years in the making, and it'll add a 10,000 square foot building and renovate the firing range.
Dangerous winds have returned back to California, threatening week-long efforts of crews to get the wildfires under control. At least 24 people have died and more than 12,000 structures have been destroyed. Michael Yoshida is in Altadena with how conditions are looking this afternoon.
Firefighters continuing to battle the deadly Los Angeles wildfires. A week into the efforts, officials warning the fight and danger is far from over.
We're very well prepared for the next event, but that's never going to be, we're never sure that we're going to be able to catch the next fire and keep it small.
The Palisades, Eaton, and Hearst fires wiping out years of history across L.A.
It's 36 years of memories just gone. My mom was hysterical. I can't even put into words how painful it was to see her pain.
Thousands of homes destroyed and dozens of lives lost. Chris Weisner sharing these photos of his friend Randall Mayad, who was killed as the Palisades fire overwhelmed his home.
I can't sleep much. It's heartbreaking. My wife and I are crying all the time.
And with search crews still going through debris, first responders with a sobering message. Angelenos should be prepared for the death toll to keep rising.
It is a very grim task. And we, unfortunately, every day we're doing this, we're running across the remains of individual community members.
Even with such devastation, there are moments of hope as communities come together, donating and doing what they can to help.
You guys live in the City of Angels. We're Angelenos. This is absolutely breathtaking. I never done anything like this in my life. I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I hope one day it makes sense. And until then, I'm going to keep on trying to do what I'm doing.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says there have been talks about tying wildfire aid to a debt limit increase. Eating healthier, what the 80-20 rule is and how you can use it to feed your body what it needs.
A sculpture stolen worth thousands of dollars. Video from the art gallery shows how 2 of the men pulled this off. Our team is working to bring you exclusive stories for coverage you'll find only on WRAL. Visit WRAL.com and search only.
Sweet or savory? Which kind of food do you turn to when you're feeling stressed? Experts say overindulging may do more harm than good to not only our physical health, but mental health as well.
Mandy Gaither explains how comfort foods, they can have an impact on our brain and how you can trick yourself into eating healthier.
It's what we tend to turn to in times of turmoil. Comfort food may bring quick but temporary relief during a bad day, but it can also have a significant impact on your brain.
The first thing that happens is you're not satiated, so you want more of that same food. So it starts to tap into your craving cycles. But the other reason is that these foods then become quite addictive.
Dr. Uma Naidu says research shows that foods that are high in sugar, for example, can also tap into the same reward pathways in the brain as substances like street drugs.
Unfortunately, because these foods cause high blood sugar levels over time, this over the course of your life can actually impact your brain and lead to things like atrophy or brain atrophy. So it actually is damaging to your brain.
Avoiding these foods can be hard. Naidu says the moment something is off limits, your brain wants it more. But she says you can trick your mind into developing healthier habits.
What about some blueberries in your fridge? A clementine with a piece of dark chocolate does phenomenal.
Naidu says instead of giving up an entire food group, your brain will do better with the 80-20 rule.
Which is 80% of the time be eating those healthy foods. And 20% of the time it's the holidays or life happens or it's your birthday, you're traveling, and it's okay.
As Mandy Gaither reporting, it's important to remember living healthier is a continuum, so it's best to take and make changes to your diet over time.
We've heard of grand theft auto. What about grand theft art? How a thief made off with a valuable glass sculpture.
Get ready for another blast of Arctic air. We'll explain what's bringing colder air to North Carolina. Live looking, Carrie. Look at those blue skies. This is just gorgeous out there. And you know what? Enjoy 40 or so temperature wise because the chill is on the way for tomorrow. Single digits in the wind chill category in some of our viewing area. Police in Florida are searching for a man caught on camera stealing a valuable piece of artwork. Video shows two men walk into an art gallery. This is back in November. One distracts the employee. The other grabs the glass sculpture and watch as he struggles to hide it under his clothing. The sculpture, titled Torso 11, is worth about $21,000. The man who distracted the worker has been caught and is working with police to find the man who actually swiped that sculpture. A 55-year-old Texas man charged with stalking WNBA Indiana Fever Caitlin Clark appeared in court this morning. Court records say the man sent threatening and sexually explicit messages to Clark on social media. Officers traced the messages to an IP address from a hotel near one of the arenas where the Fever plays its home games. Police arrested him after he ignored their warning to stop sending the messages. If convicted, he faces up to 6 years in prison plus a $10,000 fine.
So far this January has been the coldest since 2018, and it is only going to get colder. Meteorologist Chris Michaels explains what the polar vortex is and why it's responsible for another blast of Arctic air heading our way.
Polar vortex, one of those buzzwords that came onto the scene about a decade ago. Thing is, it's nothing new. It's not something that hits you, but pieces of it can break off and deliver some big time cold into parts of the U.S. Here's what it is. It's this pretty much permanent area of low pressure that's in the stratosphere and over the Arctic. So the stratosphere being the layer of the atmosphere that's above us. And you might be asking, okay, well, then why do we even care about that? Well, if the polar vortex is stable, then the wind around it is keeping it locked in the Arctic, and we really don't feel any effects from it. However, it's a little unstable. The wind is weaker in the Arctic. It allows that colder air to really start pouring down into the eastern U.S., and there's some signals of that happening as we head into the early and middle part of next week. In fact, the Climate Prediction Center with NOAA showing that there's a very high likelihood of below average temperatures between January 19th and 23rd. So that would take us through much of next week. Does that mean snow? We're going through some of the possibilities and scenarios right now on WRAL.com.
What, again? Twice in 2 weeks?
I know.
Be crazy. Don't break off even a little piece of that polar vortex just yet.
A nice lesson from Professor Michaels. Now we go to Professor Gardner to how that is going to translate for us here in the Triangle.
Well, the one thing that we feel sure about is that it's going to be really cold next week. The big question is, will a system come in that brings any precipitation? And that is, of course, the wild card for next week. But this week, we're looking at a big chill coming in. We're going to have a weak front that doesn't have any precipitation come through, but it's going to open the door to the Arctic, bringing us some really cold temperatures for tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. And then gradually we warm back up again. This weekend, it looks like rain. I know it's a lot to keep up with, but we are not expecting anything frozen over this weekend. It's going to be cold the next couple of days, and it's going to warm up, and then it's going to get cold again, and then we'll see what happens. Right now, it's pretty out there. Fayetteville, Raleigh, Apex, Chapel Hill, all looking pretty with blue skies. Chapel Hill, courtesy of Top of the Hill Restaurant. It's just going to be cold if you happen to be up really early tomorrow morning. At 3 a.m., it's going to feel like 22, but by the time a lot of us are heading out the door, that window between, say, 6 and 9, it's going to feel like low to mid-teens, somewhere between 11 and 15 is what it's going to feel like. And that's just going to be cold all day today. It's going to feel like 26 at lunchtime tomorrow and about 35 in the afternoon when we see the warmest temperatures. Here it is right now. There's the boundary. Behind it, our wind is coming out of the north, so we get that blast of colder air that sticks around for about 48 hours before it all lifts northward to be replaced by the next system. It retreats, and we see a system coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico along with a cold front, and that brings rain. And it looks pretty impressive as we take a look at our computer model, but it's likely to be a bit lighter than what's being shown here. This is going to be Saturday morning early. We should see rain by lunchtime, and you can see it looks a little heavier down to the south. Probably going to see around a half an inch as an average. Notice this is 3 a.m. Sunday, and that heaviest rain has shifted offshore. Watch how it fills in during the afternoon on Sunday. Our other computer model, this is the European model, the American model pushes it all out of here and leaves us dry on Sunday. Now, in the next 24 hours, we'll start to get in our high resolution data, and that will help to really fine tune the arrival time and how much rain that we'll see. But for now, I would expect rain on Saturday with a less likely chance on Sunday. All right, we turn our attention to next week, as Chris was talking about, our risk for heavy snow for a good chunk of the country, but it doesn't necessarily include the southeast. Right now, the European model is snow-free. There's a system that develops along this front, but it stays well to the south. The American model, on the other hand, wants to pull that low a little farther to the north, and that's always the big story. Is it going to pull north? Is it going to stay offshore? And that is scenario 1 and 2. Way too early to have any sort of idea what may happen. At 7 to 10 days out, which is where we are right now, we're looking for patterns, and definitely part of the pattern is in place. We feel confident that it will turn cold. Right now, it's too early to know whether we're going to see a low pressure system adding any precipitation in. So in the meantime, here's what we're concerned about. 22 tomorrow morning, but feeling like teens. We'll see a high of only 40 degrees tomorrow afternoon. But we do see that big warm up for the weekend. Overnight lows are in the upper 30s to low 40s, and highs are in the 50s.
Elizabeth, thanks. Soaring to the Top, a self-help book, hits #1 on Amazon's list after eagle-eyed football fans saw it in the hands of a player.
This is great. Also, here's a look at your winning Powerball numbers: 4, 6, 16, 39, 66. The Powerball is 9. The multiplier is 2.
Such a gorgeous afternoon with highs in the 40s. Enjoy this before the temperature tumbles tomorrow morning and we get that Arctic air in. Well, as we wrap things up, here's a look at a few of the headlines we're following today. 2 men charged with kidnapping a woman and assaulting her with a machete are due in court this afternoon. Wake County deputies say Dustin Letchworth and Daryl Holden assaulted the woman on New Year's Eve and held her against her will. A man was held yesterday to find Letchworth after he ran from deputies. He was arrested just after 11 last night.
And during the manhunt for him, this alert was sent out, and even if you didn't live near Zebulon, you likely got it. The Director of Fire Services and Emergency Management for Wake County explained what happened, saying in part, while our intention was to reassure the affected community that the suspect was no longer a danger, a system error caused the alert to reach a much broader audience than intended. The county is working with the vendor to prevent similar issues in the future.
The 15-year-old shot and killed over the weekend has been identified by his family as Arion Clendenning. He went by AJ. He was shot and killed outside his apartment on Danube Drive Saturday afternoon. Family members say they plan to have a balloon release for AJ later this week. His funeral will be later this month. AJ is the second person in Durham under the age of 18 to be shot this year.
Well, it takes physical and mental toughness to make it in the NFL, and now some fans can also find their inner excellence. A mental skills book titled Inner Excellence skyrocketed to the top of Amazon's bestsellers list one day after cameras showed Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown reading it on the bench, on the sidelines, between play, during the game. Brown said the self-help book comes to him to every game, and he says it helps him refocus after every drive. The author, Jim Murphy, says he doesn't know the three-time Pro Bowler, but he plans to reach out to him, and he better thank him.
Yeah, I feel like he needs to start a book club, though. Read with AJ. You know, a lot of people would be into that.
I agree.
Congratulations are in order again for Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes and his wife Brittany. The couple announced the arrival of their third child via Instagram. Mahomes says daughter Golden Ray and mom are doing well. Patrick and Brittany met as teenagers while attending high school in Texas, and they married in March of 2022. Brittany is the co-owner of the Kansas City Current soccer team.
Our pet of the day is a sensitive soul looking for a home where she can feel safe and secure. Cheyenne can be a bit nervous around other dogs, prefers her own space, a little shy, in need of reassurance. Her ideal home would be one where she can take things at her own pace so she can learn to trust and feel loved. If you're interested in learning more about her, you can reach out to the volunteer matchmakers at the Wake County Animal Shelter.
Concerns over a dangerous intersection. Why Raleigh community members say and business owners say this intersection is putting lives at risk, and what they say needs to be done to fix it.
Might be a couple of days before we can really appreciate the 44 or so that we're going to get out here today with a lot of sunshine, comfortable for this time of year, but the cold, it's coming.
Oh, and for the next 3 mornings, just make sure you find your heaviest coat, layer up, wear the gloves and the hats and everything. We're talking wind chills. Some of you, it could be in the single digits. That's cold.
Careful out there. NBC News Daily is up next on WRAL, your next local news update in 30 minutes.
You can get breaking news updates anytime with our WRAL News app. Have a great Tuesday.
Keep watching WRAL News over the air Channel 34 and Spectrum Channel 1257.